Hey guys, welcome to another Coturnix Corner Live. Um, I guess I ought to bring my guest in here so it's not just me. Hey, Jennifer, everybody, welcome Jennifer Bryant from Bryant's Roost to the show. Jennifer, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
We are going to be talking about getting started with Coturnix Quail. And Jennifer's got a little slideshow that she put together for you guys. Um, so we'll be going through that shortly. We are also going to be doing some giveaways, announcing, well, I actually announced it Sunday, the winner of the Coturnix Kids Project, but we're going to go ahead and show it again on tonight's live. First off, let me get back to my screen here. What happened to it? Shout out to our sponsors, Gopher Ridge Quail Farm and Hatching Time. HP Murray of Gopher Ridge donates hatching eggs to give away every week for the live streams. Tonight we're going to be giving away a 30 count of mixed hatching eggs and also a, I'm not sure of the number, but you're going to get some jumbo egg cartons that are sized for the jumbo eggs. The cartons, like when you're selling eating eggs and whatnot. We're also going to be giving away a $50 Hatching Time gift certificate. And I believe Jennifer volunteered to give away a, how much? What size, Jennifer?
We can do a 40 count.
A 40 count of
My
what?
choice.
Of your choice.
My choice.
Perfect. So, guys, what we're going to do is when we go to the Q&A section or session part of it, we're going to select, or I'll have Jennifer select her favorite question of the night, and then I'll select a couple other people for the other giveaways from Gopher Ridge and Hatching Time. Also, let's see. I'm going to go ahead real quick. We did Sunday. We announced the winner of the Coturnix Kids Project, but I'm going to go ahead real quick and give a shout out to Randy. Randy's 13 years old. He did a really nice write-up. I'm not going to read the whole write-up to you guys. You can watch it on Sunday's Live if you want to see what it is, but he did a really nice write-up. What he did was took his llamas and alpacas to it's called the Griffith Center, and it's basically a mental health and behavioral health services for local kids, I guess, in his area. And they had a really good time, talking about the what do you call them, camelids. And so he was selected for winner for October. We have let's see. Oh, here's another one. This is a picture he just sent in to me. He started getting his prizes in. It looks like he got his Hatching Time setup in and the cage put together. So congratulations, Randy. Really appreciate you, sending in your entry. If anybody else has kids that want to get involved in this, Cookie, I'm going to put you over here. If anybody else has kids that want to get involved in this, you can go over to coturnixcorner.com, and there's some links in there that will basically tell you how to go about getting them entered. Like I said, tonight's giveaways is a 30 count for Gopher Ridge, some jumbo egg cartons, and also a $50 Hatching Time gift certificate. And Bryant's Roost is giving away a 40 count. So tonight we are going to be talking about getting started with Coturnix. I know there's a lot of new people who are just getting into quail. I get messages all the time. People want to know, what videos should I watch or where should I get my eggs from? And Jennifer is going to talk about that tonight, and it'll be a good start for you guys. So, Jennifer, if you are ready,
I'm
you
ready.
can go ahead and take it away. Do you want the slideshow up right away?
Sure.
Okay. It's all yours. Take it away, Jennifer.
All right. Thank you. So I see a lot of questions online about what breed is this bird. So I figured I'd start off with their Coturnix, hence the Coturnix Corner. So the Coturnix is always going to be the breed. Now they come in a variety of colors, and that probably is the correct question. If you're showing up in your pictures on Facebook or whatnot, and you want to know what they are, the correct question would be, what variety is my Coturnix quail? Just thought I'd throw that out there. Not all colors are feather sexable, so you won't be able to show pictures of every bird and get a proper sex by color. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there as a beginner, because it seems like that's kind of a muddy water area. This slide tells you there's 3 ways to get started in quail. You can order hatching eggs, you can order chicks, or you can start off with breeders and adults. You can find them local, you can order them from breeders, you can order them from just about anywhere. If you start off with eggs, then you need to have an incubator, obviously. Coturnix are not known for going broody. I have had people buy eggs. I had one yesterday come get eggs and put them under a broody bantam hen. I wouldn't recommend that as a go-to way of getting started with quail, but it could be fun to try it if you wanted to. But in general, when you order eggs, you need a incubator. And it's going to take 17 days for those to incubate, and then another 8-ish weeks for them to start laying. So you're looking at about 10, 11 weeks to get your first eggs. By the time you order, assuming they're shipped that day, you're looking at 10 or 11 weeks before you get your first egg. Now you could order chicks or buy chicks locally. I mean, local is always going to be the better bet, unless you're looking for a very specific genetic thing, color. Just buy local, get your feet wet with the quail, and see if it's for you, if you want to continue, what your goals are. But you can buy chicks. I would hesitate to sell any chicks less than a week old to somebody just getting started. A week old chicks kind of got their feet under them, kind of going. They understand life, and they're a little bit easier to deal with. But if you know what you're doing, if you've had chicks before, you could start with a little bit younger, but just kind of keep that in mind. So if you started with chicks, you'd be looking at 6 to 8 weeks to get your first eggs. So if you're planning out when you want your eggs to start, like say in the wintertime, that information is important. You can also order breeders, buy breeders, adults locally. I am not a fan of swaps, and I'm just going to throw that out there on my soapbox for just a minute. I think you can pick up a lot of old animals, a lot of diseased animals, and you can bring diseases home. I'm not a fan of swaps for that reason. If you've already got birds at home, I would not go to swaps, because you can lose your whole flock doing that. So buy from somebody reputable, or clean at least, if you're buying local. And if you're ordering breeders, you want 5 to 7 week old breeders. You don't want older birds. There's a lot of reasons why you don't want older birds, so try to stick to the 5 to 7 week range, and make sure you're buying them from MPIP, and ask them if they know how to ship. I'm not saying you don't want to buy from somebody who's never shipped before, because then you're their guinea pig, but somebody that kind of knows what they're doing behind the scenes would be a good place to start. The only way to ship birds is post office express. There is no delivery services with $150 deposit that you get back. Those are all scams. Stay away from that. So if somebody says they're not shipping them express, then those are scammers, and just stay away from those people. If you do decide to start with adults, you're going to be getting your eggs in probably 2 weeks. And then you can incubate from them within 3 to 4 weeks, because you got to let them get their pullet eggs out, get full-size eggs, get fertility going, and that's a whole nother slide. We're going to get to that. but you'll get eggs a whole lot quicker if you start with breeders. So monetarily, the eggs are going to be the cheapest way to start if you're not going to count the incubator cost. Chicks would be a good way to start if you don't want to mess with the incubator, but you still want birds. And breeders would be a good place to start if you have an incubator and you want to breed more, or you just want some hens. I have a lot of people that just order hens. They just want eggs for the summer. And they order them in the spring. They get all hens, and next year they'll order hens again. So there's a lot of ways to do quail. There's as many ways to do quail as there are people doing quail. I believe that. All right, next slide.
Oh, yeah.
All right, this is just a little diagram on how to incubate, just short and sweet. You're going to always want to incubate either pointy side down or on their side. And the reason for that is the air cell is in the fat end of an egg. And so you never incubate or even store eggs pointy side up. Always pointy side down or on their side. The day that you put the egg in the incubator is day 0 because they've been in the incubator 0 amount of time. So that's where you start. The temperature and the humidity should be 99.5 and 40-ish%. You don't lose sleep and get hung up on that number. The temperature needs to be 99.5. That's just the way it is. But the humidity needs to be roughly 40-ish%. If you're running 30, that's fine. If you're running 45, that's fine. I wouldn't go much over 45. And in the summer, the spring, maybe even in the fall, depending on where you live, you probably don't even need to add water to your incubator in order to achieve that level of humidity. But in the wintertime, when the heat is on, it's drier because the heat is on. That's where you're going to have to play with the water in your machine to achieve that humidity. Candling seems to be a huge, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for, Terry?
Pain in the butt.
I don't candle. I mean, I just don't. I don't have time for it. I'm moving too many eggs through there, and there's no point. If an egg's going to hatch, it's going to hatch. And if it's not going to hatch, it's not going to hatch. You're going to find out in a couple weeks. So I don't candle them. The more that you expose them to temperature change, the more you handle them, the more you're flipping them around, trying to see better, which you can't see much anyway in a quail egg. You're damaging the embryo. So you've paid all this money for an incubator. You've paid this money for the eggs. Just leave them be. Don't candle them. You're going to find out, I promise you, in a couple of weeks what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. We hear a lot of talk about lockdown, and that's typically day 14. Do not get hung up on this day either. The point of turning an egg is to keep the membrane from getting stuck to the shell or the yolk getting stuck to the membrane. You're just kind of trying to keep everything liquid and in motion, and not getting stuck to anything. But once the chick is formed, he's moving. Watch a video on candling. Candling, I have videos on candling duck eggs because duck eggs are spectacular to see the embryo moving in there because the shells are so clear. But once that chick starts moving in there, him getting stuck to the membrane isn't as big of a deal as it is, like, say, on day 5. So if you're busy on day 14, then do it on day 12. It's not something to get stuck in stone there. You don't really want to do it much past day 14 because they're getting in position to pip and zip and hatch and all that good stuff. So air earlier versus later. And they should hatch on day 17, be dry on day 18, and ready to come out at that point. Every incubator should have vents, and that's for fresh air to come in. The chick is breathing in that air cell that's in the fat end that we talked about already. The fresh air helps them fluff and dry. If you are running a cheaper incubator, and I am not knocking cheaper incubators at all, all have had them, but if they don't have vents, I used to wear readers, and I had readers laying on every table, and I would just stick the earpiece in the lid to prop it a little bit, so they would dry and fluff better. You don't want that humidity going up over 70%. They can't dry. I mean, if you think about walking into a sauna, there's no way you could dry your hair in a sauna. So you need to get some fresh air in there moving so that they can dry and fluff and they don't get a chill. And the age-old question, they can stay in the incubator for 48 hours if it's necessary, but you don't really want to. The early hatches will start dying at that point. So 48 hours, you should be pulling them out for sure. I think that's all I have on incubation. So you can flip to the next one.
Okay.
All right, brooding. So I'm going to start a war here. Heat lamp versus heat plate. Which one do you use, Terry?
I use lamps only.
Yep, I only use plates. I won't use a lamp. So they both have their pros and cons. The plates take a lot of the guesswork out. If it's too hot, if it's too cold, you can angle them. The chick can pick and choose where it wants to be, and I mean, and you don't have to really mess with it for the first 3 weeks, other than just raise it up a little bit as they get bigger. Just make sure they're in a somewhat moderate temperature room consistently, so that it can keep up. You don't want to like put a heat plate on cold concrete. That won't work. But you don't really want to put a heat lamp on cold concrete either. Heat lamps, if you're going to use heat lamps, you need to pay attention to the chicks. They're going to tell you if they're hot or cold. If they're huddling up in a corner, they're cold. If they're chirping and eating and moving around, they're comfortable. If they're huddled up under the lamp, they're cold. If they're huddled up in the corner, they're hot. So you always want to keep a heat lamp towards one end so that they can kind of pick and choose that heat area that they're after. The brooder needs to have sides on it to keep the draft off. The bedding, again, that's going to be kind of up for discussion. I've used puppy pads for years. They're great. They do create a lot of waste. So just kind of keep that in mind, but they're fantastic for brooding chicks. I have switched to stall pellets now because you can stir them up and they stay dry pretty much for 2 weeks while they're in there, and you can put them in the compost pile. Not a fan of flakes or sawdust or I don't know. What's that bedding? It's not flakes. What am I trying to think of?
The pine shavings?
Yes, pine shavings. Not a fan. They hold moisture and they stink, and they seem to have a hard time walking on them. What do you use?
Pine shavings.
Pine shavings, yeah. Try stall pellets. It's a game changer.
Yeah. I've never had a problem with the pine shavings, believe it or not. I mean, really? I got to clean every day, but
every day.
You know.
So the pine shavings, you have to clean every day, but the stall pellets, I can go in there every day and kind of stir them and bring the fresh ones up and the other ones down to the bottom. And for the 2 weeks that they're in my tubs, I don't have to change it.
The biggest thing I hate about the pine shavings is they seem to kick it up into their water. And so I got to change the water every day now.
Right.
Yeah, it's a pain, but I'm used to it.
And if they knock over the water or you don't get it turned on there exactly right, the stall pellets will absorb that and it
Right.
won't chill them. So that's another benefit, I think, to the stall pellets. And the puppy pad will absorb it, but they still will stay wet.
Right.
All right. So as far as keeping them in a brooder, that is going to be 100% dependent on your weather and how hot it is outside. Here in Tennessee, I can take the heat off at like 7 to 10 days in August. But right now it's in the 40s at night, so I will leave the heat on more like 3 weeks. So it's going to be completely dependent on where you are and how you're brooding. Are you brooding them next to your wood stove in your house or out in the cold shed or on your porch? So you have to kind of keep in mind how you're doing it. But I don't think any bird really needs the heat much past 4 weeks, even in the worst cold of conditions. Right. They're pretty hardy birds, actually. So at that point, once they're off heat, there's a juveniles. You're still feeding them starter feed. You're not going to change that. They just need clean water and as much starter feed as they will eat. And then after that, they're considered adults after about 8 or 9 weeks. And then we're going to move into housing for the next slide. Now I'm going to rely on you a little bit here, Terry, because you have all these different kinds of housing and I only do one. So that picture of the hatching time cages, that is actually my barn setup at one point. It's much larger setup at this point, but that was the first picture I found. So I like cages. They're in my insulated barn. They're protected from the weather. They have consistent lighting, consistent weather because they're in the barn. They don't have rain or anything on them. It's convenient for me with the egg rollout trays. As a shipper, we need that cleanliness, the consistency of it. Hutches are great if you want to keep them outside and you don't want to mess with poop trays. Everything's going to have a pro and con. Okay. So the hutches would be more out in the weather. You can let the droppings go onto the ground so you don't have to mess with cleaning poop trays, but they do need a place to get out of the weather, a windbreak. And then you can do full-on aviary and deck it to the nines and put chairs in there and a TV and radios and whatever you want to put in there. Sure. So that's what you have now, right? An aviary?
That's all I have now, yes.
Yep. Which do you prefer of all those three?
I like my cage setup inside just because I had, quite a few birds. But the aviary is nice because it's a deep litter method, for the substrate. So I go out there, and turn it in every month or so, and it's good. But I kind of miss having my cages and the birds indoors because it was more of a controlled area, controlled setup, So.
Right. My biggest thing would be if you were shopping for hatching eggs or eating eggs even, I would probably steer somewhat clear of somebody who had an aviary because there's always going to be an egg that gets missed.
Yep.
And in a cage setup, those cages all have egg rolls out. It would be really hard. I mean, you would have to be trying really hard to miss an egg. Sure. I don't think that it's possible.
Right.
In the hutch, I mean, you might be able to miss an egg for a day or two, but I don't think you'd be able to miss it for months or weeks even. So the last points that I have would be light. A quail, well, any bird, but especially we're talking about quail here, they need at least 14 hours of light to lay. You can use, I use LED lights on Christmas timers. They come on at 6 o'clock in the morning. They go off at 9 o'clock at night. You could use solar lights if they were bright enough. I've never tried. But they need to be able to be, hey, it's time to be awake. It's time to eat. It's time to move around. No different than we get gloomy in the wintertime and need that light to stay up. Weather, Again, I live in Tennessee, so we don't get extreme weather, but Bree's up north and she leaves hers out in the snow and the ice down to like -40 in Wisconsin. So they can withstand the cold temperatures. And then lastly is the feed. They need 30%, 28 to 30% starter when they are chicks. Don't have to grind it unless you're talking about really small chicks. Like I deal in jumbos, but if you were talking about standards or buttons or something, then you're going to need to grind a little bit, but we're not looking for powder there. We're just looking for a variety of size. And we're only talking about for a few days at the most. And then leave them on that starter until they start to lay. And after they're good, they're laying every day, they've got the hang of it, start switching them over to layer, which I use a 17%. And about once every 10 days or so, I'll give them a shot of developer at 20% just to kind of change it up, give them something different to eat. And that's really all they need. So if they're laying big double yolkers, your protein's too high. If they're not laying well, your protein could be too high. So too many treats. If you're feeding them 30% and you're giving them mealworms, you're really feeding them more like 40 or 50%. So you got to watch those treats. Try vegetables. If you're going to insist on treats, try veggies, berries, seeds, greens, things like that. So that is all that I have, Terry.
Okay. If anybody's got any questions for Jennifer, go ahead. I just knocked my camera over. Go ahead and post them in the chat room. Please type the letter Q in front of your question. That way I can find it because I'm not going to read every single one. Let me get rid of this. There we go. I had a question I was going to ask you, and darn if I can remember what it is now. It's hell getting old. Yeah, my whole setup has changed as far as my way of taking care of my birds. Like the ones that I just hatched out, well, the ones from you and the ones from HP, they were outside at 2 weeks old out in the aviary, and they're doing just fine. They were off the light. Yeah, everything's changed. It's kind of hard for me to get used to because I'm used to doing everything inside in my shop, and everything's totally changed. So, all right, where are we here? I'm not gonna read all the comments because I don't know.
I can't see them, so
I'll put them on the screen for you as soon as I can get to them.
Did you have them
I'm on the wrong computer. What am I doing?
Did you have them out in the aviary during the hurricane or after?
What's that?
Did you have them out in the hurricane in the aviary or
no? As a matter of fact, the eggs that I got from you hatched the day of the hurricane, and here I am waiting for the power to go out. So luckily, I was okay. We had power right up until later on that night, so I just fired up the generator when it went out. But no, I got lucky there. Okay. I was on the wrong computer. Now I got to start all over again.
No. They seem to get a bad rap too about trying to kill themselves and stuff, and I just don't find that to be true. Yeah. Really.
No, I don't either. I mean, and I always hear horror stories about people losing chicks, out of the brooder within the first couple of days. I very seldom lose chicks. I mean, if I lose 1 in 100, that's a lot for me,
Mm-hmm.
All right, where are we here? We got a lot of people in there.
Well, that's good. Well, that's something I didn't really mention. So the breeder nutrition is what the chick lives off of. So make sure you're feeding the breeders correctly to get that healthy, vigorous chick.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
A Lot of Spoon says, welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for joining us live.
Well, hi.
William Carl Foster's in the house. Says H.P. Murray has stood the test of time. None better. I agree 100%. Okay. Kurt TV says, hello from Michigan. Thanks for all the info, Terry and Jennifer. All right, here's a question. Van Garcia says, question, for how many weeks should I feed chicks high-protein starter feed?
I feed them until they have been laying eggs for at least a week or even 2 weeks. Then I start moving them over to layer. Because you want them to finish building their structure, finish growing, so that they have the nice hip width to handle the eggs. You want them to finish structurally before you encourage them to lay.
Tater Farm wants to know, how did you get started in quail, Jennifer, and why? What was your why?
My why the why is not relevant. How I got started was a guy down the road came and asked me if I would incubate some quail for him, and turned out to be an awesome friend to me. And my fee for incubating those eggs for him was to keep 10% of the chicks. So that was my starting locally to see if they were for me. And I put them in some rabbit cages that I found on Craigslist. It took me about 5 minutes to realize that I love the darn little things.
Mm-hmm.
So I started cage shopping, settled on the hatching time, sold the rabbit cages, ate all of those birds because they were just mutts, and found the birds that I wanted, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I pretty much the same thing on my end. I was doing chickens before that, and we're only allowed to have 4 chickens. Well, I found out actually we can have more than that now, but I wanted something that I could have more. So I thought, well, I'll do silky chicks inside. That was a bad idea.
No.
And then I got into quail, and it just took off from there.
Mm-hmm.
Data Farm says, how long do you leave the unhatched eggs in the incubator past 17 days?
I pulled them on 19 days. So Carrie calls me ruthless. I don't want the early hatches and I don't want the late hatches. I want the ones that do what they're supposed to do from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a strong believer that is why I have such a healthy flock, is because I don't allow birds to do anything else.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I usually, once I have the bulk of them hatch out, I'll give them 24 hours after that, and then I pull the plug.
Right.
Raymond says, how many generations would it take to build up your own line of Coturnix to be called my line?
They're yours as soon as you start putting them together, because you're going to choose differently. You're going to look at them differently. You're going to feed them differently. Breeding is 3 things: environment, feed, and genetics. You're going to feed them differently. You're going to mix the genetics differently, and your environment. They're your birds as soon as they leave my house.
Okay. William Carl Foster says, try using cracked corn in your brooder for bedding.
Ooh.
I've heard that. That's an idea. That I can get.
Yeah. It's more expensive, though, than stall pellets.
Where do you get the saw? I've never heard of those pellets. Where do you
They're
get
in the horse section at Tractor Supply, but my feed store just brings them to me by the pallet at this point.
What do they run?
$6 or $7 for 50 pounds.
Really?
And you only need like 4 scoops per. I use those small brooders because I keep my hatches separately.
Right.
So it takes me like 4 cupfuls in a brooder.
I'm gonna have to give that a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Blazing Gale says, question, so around 8 weeks they can be moved to their housing. Is this regardless of variety? Like some chicken breeds are slower feathering. Do any Coturnix varieties have the same issues?
Not to my knowledge, but again, what you're willing to tolerate is the weakest thing you're willing to tolerate is going to be how weak your flock is. So if you have a slow feathering bird, that's how weak your flock is going to be. That's pretty blunt, but that's how I feel about it.
Mhm.
So you can move them out to your aviary long before 8 weeks. I mean, they're ready to go out at 4 or 5 weeks, depending on your weather. I mean, if you're in Florida, you
I
can
do
raise them out
2 weeks.
in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, my birds are always off the light at 2 weeks, and they
Mm-hmm.
do just fine. Homestead Matter says, question, when would you recommend looking into NPIP if the end goal is to be a small-time breeder for local sales? Is it only required to ship across state lines?
My understanding is you only have to have it to ship across state lines.
Yep.
Now, if you're doing it, there are some states, like if you're doing it for resale, like you're supplying a feed store or something, then you would need to be NPIP. But other than that, if you're not crossing state lines, you don't need it, don't need the hassle.
Right. When I was selling birds local, I kept my NPIP active just because that was just something I could tell the customer, they are NPIP clean, just kind of like the AKC thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't renew. There's no need for me to have it now.
I had somebody call me from California, and she was asking me about NPIP, and I asked her how much it would be, and I was glad I was sitting down. So here in Tennessee, I think it's 70. It went up to $75, I think.
Wow.
And she said it was going to cost her close to $2,000, and I was like, there is no birds worth $2,000 of
Ours is
NPIP.
free. We don't pay for it. They come out and test them and everything. It's all free. Okay, Blazing Gale says, question, do they need a medicated feed? Does it matter, or is it preference?
I am 100,000% against medicated feed for any bird. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I don't feed medicated either.
So how it works is it blocks the vitamin B, thiamine, right? Keep uptake, and you can get neurological issues as a result from that. What it's helping is coccidiosis, and coccidiosis is a oocyte protozoa, and the only way a bird can get it is if you introduce it to the brooder. So if you have a clean brooder and you have clean hands when you go in there, you should not have a problem.
What about birds that are kept outside on the ground?
Well, survival of the fittest.
I mean, I was worried about mine a little bit because I had chickens in my aviary. I've never seen any signs of coccidia, so I figured the quail will be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be a moist, hot environment. But keep your ground in a neutral state. I use a lot of ag lime to keep that pH coming up. If you keep the soil healthy, you shouldn't have an overload. Any issues.
Yeah, I've never seen a problem with it down here with any of my birds. Hannah wants to know, when giving seeds, do you give grit?
I don't give seeds, but I would if I was giving them.
I heard Jeff Maddox saying that quail should have grit regardless, even with the crumbles.
All birds should have grit, but I have too many birds, so they don't get it.
Right. I haven't fed my grit in a long time either. My Shepherd Crew says, do you add any sort of supplement to newly hatched chicks' water?
I do. Years and years and years ago, when I just had chickens and ducks, I found this lady out of Michigan. It's called Moonlight Mile Herbal Farms, and she has a starter tonic. It's made with garlic and nettles and vinegar, and if she would give me her recipe, I would pay dearly for it. But I swear by that stuff, and I give it to all of my birds for the first week. It settles their gut bacteria. They don't have any issues. Even my exhibition birds, I mean, they all get started on the best foot that way.
Do you know what's in it?
No, she won't give up her recipe.
Really?
She has a website, though. You can go to her website, and I buy it in bulk because her shipping's a little on the high side. So I make one big purchase in the winter for the whole year and just keep it in the refrigerator. But the ad says garlic and nettles and oregano and vinegar.
Oh, wow.
And she grows all of it on her farm and mixes it herself.
I'll be darned.
But I like supporting small farmers,
Sure. Kurt says, have you ever switched out incubators after you have started a batch of eggs?
I can't say that I have, but I mean, if something was wrong with the first one, it wouldn't stop me from doing it.
Yeah, especially if you had like an incubator fail or something and you had to move them. Linda says, great presentation. Love the graphics.
Oh, thank you.
Glad you could join us too, Linda. Haven't seen you in a while. Obsidian says, Bernadine here. I have a problem with missing feathers in backs, even with all hands. Why is this?
That Bernadine. Yeah, I had her in my mind because we and her talked about the NPIP just the other day.
Okay.
So we've talked about that before, and I still am of the opinion that it's a housing issue. If you've ruled that out and you're using Kalmbach, then I don't have an answer for you without being there or seeing a video of the situation.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what she's feeding. Maybe they're a little low on protein. That's why they're plucking feathers, eating feathers.
I'm pretty sure she feeds Kalmbach. My guess is the grow out cage is overstocked. I have a couple that are overstocked, and I'll see it sometimes there.
Okay.
Like right now, I have a couple that are crowded. I'm going to sort them tomorrow. I keep promising them it's tomorrow, but it really is tomorrow now.
Yeah, if she had roosters with them, I'd just think it was overbreeding. But
yeah, I think these are juveniles.
Oh, sweet. All right. All clean exterior says, question, is there a specific stall pellet that's best any to stay away from?
To my knowledge, there's just the one. It's just compressed sawdust is all it is.
Oh, is it?
It looks like a giant, I don't know, a giant horse pellet. They're like, what, 1.5 inches long maybe and 1/2 inch across. And then when you wet them, it just turns to sawdust. So I think that's why I just like them so much. So if they spill their water or whatever, it just absorbs up, turns to sawdust. You can just stir it, bring the original pellets back to the top that haven't dissolved yet, and keep on trucking. It's a whole lot easier than all the garbage from the puppy pads. But when I say that, on the scale that I'm at, that's a lot of puppy pads and a lot of weight and a lot of trash. So if you're just talking about one brooder every few months, puppy pads would be really easy.
Let's see. Ed says, do you use the 50-50 vinegar water mix to introduce birds together?
No, never use that. I throw them together, sink or swim.
Yep.
They'll work it out.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I introduced the last batch of 2-week-olds to the batch that was already out there, and I think they're closer to 5, they had no problems. They got along great.
I can see that problem in my big chickens. You're going to have a more of a pecking order in the chickens, but you never pull the victim. You always pull the bully. And I think that's where people mess up. They want to save the victim.
Right.
You want to take the bully out and give it a stern talking to.
Do you add any supplements to newly hatched chicks' water? I think we already had that one up here. He says, thank you, Jennifer. Very informative.
Oh, you're welcome.
Homestead Matter says, can we shout out Poultry Nerds podcast? Perfect chore time. Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome. I am so enjoying the podcast. So enjoying it. So it's grown enough that it's actually going to have its own website here soon. I'm working on it.
Cool. Yeah, I saw you had a Facebook group for it.
Yep.
Cool. Andy Rabbit says, question, is the jumbos you have today the same as the ones you started with?
No. So after I got rid of those first mutts, that was my fee, right, for incubating. I got rid of those. Then I went, now y'all have to understand that I wasn't on Facebook at the time. So I found a local that had some eggs, and I just went and I bought 6 dozen eggs off of him. And he lives about, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour away from me. And I was using the quail to understand genetics and feed and how to sort and how to choose, because my primary focus was my chickens. So, but the quail turnover so much faster that I could gain more information. Then I discovered Facebook and colors and all of that other stuff. But meanwhile, I'm trying to breed up those eggs that I had gotten, because those were actually standards. I didn't even know that at the time. It was quail, is all I knew.
Sure.
So those birds are truly mine, because as I was breeding them, that's where I found the Egyptian recessive gene that came out. And that's what started me down the rabbit hole of genetics, was that Egyptian. And that's why I now have those 2 lines, was from those original birds. I've never brought any more Egyptian or Pharaoh, sex-link brown, whatever you want to call them, into my farm. I've only bought 3 sets. Well, actually, I've only bought 2 sets of eggs. Those first 6 dozen, I bought the Celadon gene from Michael, and I traded HP some button for the fee. So that's the only time I brought genetics in, was those 3 times.
Cool. I didn't know you had fee.
I've got fee, and my new thing is the sparkly fee, the barred rock quail. You liked my post.
I saw that picture. Them look pretty cool.
Yep. Yep. Again, that's another thing that I found in the birds. I didn't intend to have it.
Okay, Blazing Gale says, question, with the stall pellets, how often does it need to be changed, or do you just turn it daily? So
just, I mean, when they're tiny, like straight out of the incubator, you can probably go 3 or 4 days before you even have to do anything, unless a water spill or something like that. After that, I just kind of stir them. I have a metal putty knife, but it's not a real putty knife. I don't really know what it's for, but it's blunt. And I have it laying there, and I just kind of scoop it up and turn it over and set the brooder plate back down in there, and they think it's all great and fun because it's all nice and fluffy again. And I mean, when I take them out of there, and I put them up on wire at about 10 days, depending, of course, on the temperature out in the main part of the barn, those pellets could theoretically be used again. I don't. What I do with them is just scoop them out and throw them in the poop trays, especially if I had a water leak or something.
Sure.
Throw them up in there, absorb all that water so it doesn't make a mess when you're doing poop trays.
I want to bring this comment up also by Blazing Gale. It says, I'm going to love quail. 2 weeks is amazing to turn out. I say 2 weeks. That I'm able to do it down here because in the summertime it's really warm, and even right now it's still pretty warm. But in the wintertime, I couldn't do that. I would have to wait, till they were like 3.5 weeks old in the wintertime. It still gets pretty chilly down here. So just make sure your birds are fully feathered out, before you get them outside, especially if the weather's going to be chilly.
Yes. Yeah. All of this is relative to your location and the season.
Nabiki says, even here in Oregon, I'll put them out at 6 weeks at the latest. It gets snow and below freezing here. So there you go. Chris says, what is your favorite incubator for 120 or less eggs?
Hatching Time, hands down, Hatching Time.
They are plug and play. I got one sitting right here on the floor, the CT60.
Yep.
Andy wants to know how your Celadons are doing.
They're good. They're good.
I think this is answered your question. It says, I'll send you a video later, feeding Kalmbach. Is that with the back feathers? Obsidian?
Is that Bernadine? I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, Nunya says, question. I just hatched button quail yesterday and they're not eating or drinking yet. They're staying under the heat plate. Is it okay that I don't have a light source in the cage, only my room light?
Okay, so I don't know how many people know this, but I have a stupid amount of button quail now out in the barn. And we have approached stupid level. Okay. So buttons are going to be more akin to turkeys than they really are Coturnix in their behavior. So when I say that, a turkey poult, people talk about turkey poults being lazy, they'll drown themselves, they'll just sit there and they'll die. And they do. They want to huddle up underneath the heat and they're not active. They just want to soak up the heat and just lay there and be comfortable, and they literally will sleep themselves to death. They won't eat and drink. So the answer to that is to put something else in there that makes them active. And that's why you hear the old wives' tale of putting chicks in with your turkeys. The chicks keep them active. So the buttons, what I generally do is I just throw a couple of my smaller chicks in there, which they're all about the same size at this point, so it didn't really matter. So like this week, I threw a couple fee in there with them, and of course they're running around like kamikazes, and the buttons, they don't know what's going on, so they're running around with them. And after about 4 or 5 days, they've got the hang of life, and I can take the fee out and put them back in the proper brooder.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is your first run with buttons, you need to get them active or they're just going to sleep until they die. You need to pull that plate up, you need to stir them in the brooder, you need to keep them active. If you have chicks from something else, put them in there. They shouldn't hurt the buttons anyway. Unless there's a age difference. Size difference would be okay. Age difference would be different. And then if you're going to breed them, you're going to hatch them out regularly, you can put them in with last week's hatch. I didn't have any hatch last week, so that's why I used the Coturnix. But you got to get them active, and you're going to, if you don't have anything else to put in there, you're just going to have to do it yourself with your hand. You've got to get them up and moving.
Okay. Button quails is something I've never looked into. That's what I was going to ask you. The heat plates. How many chicks can fit underneath the heat plate in your brood?
So I use a 10 by 10 because I use those totes. The Coturnix, I'll probably put 35 in there. But now my room stays in the 70s out there in the barn.
Right.
So they're okay. Buttons, I mean, you could probably cram 200 buttons underneath one of those heat plates.
Right. Yeah, because I tried one. I had a company, I can't think of the name of them. They sent me out a heat plate, and I want to say it was either 14 or 16 inches square. And I couldn't, I normally put 50, 60 birds in a brooder when I first hatch them out. And I didn't think they could all fit under it. So I used it one time for a video and put it back in the box. I haven't touched it since.
I know like I said before, there's as many ways to do quail as there are people.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And I know that there's people that make fun of me for my totes with my brooders, but I don't web cut or toe punch or anything like that. I use painter's tape. That's how I keep everything organized. So I use the Hatch in Time incubators. They each get a piece of painter's tape on the little motor, the silver motor, and I put on there exactly what's in there, fee and sparkly fee, and I have my shorthand for everything. And then there's 3 dates. It's the date that I set them, the date that I'm moving them, and they're supposed to hatch. And when they hatch, or when they go to the hatching basket, that piece of tape goes to the hatching basket. When they hatch and they go into the brooder box, that piece of tape goes to the side of the brooder box. And when they move out to the big brooders out in the main part of the barn, that piece of tape follows them there. Somewhere along in there, it may stop sticking as much, but I have tape all over my barn, and I always have a Sharpie in my pocket. And so the painter's tape is on everything. There's nothing in my barn that does not have painter's tape on it. So that's how I keep track of everything.
Okay. Sousaphone says opinions on keeping males to incubate future generations, or is it best to grow out the males and then process them for meat?
It just purely depends on your purposes. If you want to breed them and have more and always have meat, then you're going to need males. I think people overthink how many males they need. I mean, if you only want, say, 40 every month, then you really only need a 1 or 2 breeding sets. You don't need what we've got, you know. You can have lots of cages of just layers of hens for extra eggs, but you really only need 1 or 2 breeding sets.
No, I used to do that. I used to rotate my roosters throughout my different cages. You know, you put them in there for a week, and I'll guarantee you're going to have fertile eggs for a month from that group of birds.
Oh, yeah. But always keep a backup.
340 Quail Farm says, have you ever had issues with younger roos and older hens being introduced? If so, how did you resolve? A few dominant hens are not feeling the new roos.
You need to break up the hens. I have had that issue. I called it the murderous trio one time, and it finally dawned on me what was going on, because every morning I go out there and the boy would be dead, and finally occurred to me that they were killing him. I just broke them up, put one in other breedings, you know, other holes in the cage.
All Clean Exterior says, I'd like to start breeding celadons. Who has the best to start with? Say, I do.
Celadons. Michael told me once that they're great and the biggest pain.
Yep.
Right now I'm in a hate 'em mood. I think I've shut down my shipping right now until January. I think that you couldn't go wrong with the handful of bigger breeders. But it doesn't matter. You still have to keep an eye on celadons. They can go sideways quickly.
Hannah Bishop wants to know, do you have a favorite quail color, or are you working on any color projects?
That sparkly fee. I mean, they are just knockouts. When I go out there, I just stand there and look at them, you know. I've never been a huge fan of the Barred Rock chicken. So I really don't know why these are so interesting to me, but I mean, they're really, the pictures don't really do them justice. Right. I'm really impressed with how they're turning out.
I think the sparkly gene looks good on a lot, especially in heterozygous form. Looks really good on a lot of birds, especially pharaohs. I love a sparkly pharaoh.
I might have to send you a couple eggs from these. When I got the fee, I think the fee really became my favorite. There's just something about just the stark lines maybe that I like. But then when that sparkly gene came out, thank you HP if you're listening. That just, it's the first time I'd actually seen sparkly in person. And I was like, "Ooh, I might have to coax that out." I'm coaxing it
out. Bill says, question, I use pine stall pellets with sweet PVZ and poop trays, carry style wood cages, almost zero smell until I have birds on 28% starter food growouts. Then it stinks. Is this normal?
Well, first of all, I think you have an extra expense there that isn't overly necessary. That's just my opinion. The quality of the feed going in is going to dictate what's coming out. And I know that me and you have done YouTube on this before when I did it a couple years ago, but the feed experiment, it comes up periodically in the groups. You can find it on my website. That was a side piece of information that I wasn't expecting. The Purina feed was atrocious. It was very noticeable in the barn. It was wet. It was a lot. So if you're finding that you have a big smell, try changing your feed up. That's when I found the Kalmbach. Now here we can also get Tucker. I like Tucker. Never going to knock Tucker. I use a lot of it here. But the Kalmbach, there is the amount of birds that I have. I can do poop trays once a week because
Yeah,
there's
I noticed the same thing. Before I was able to get Kalmbach, I was feeding Purina because that was I won't say the best, but basically the only feed I could get.
Mm-hmm.
The birds from the time they hatched out until the time they started laying, it stunk in my shop. I mean, it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Once I moved them over to layer feed, everything calmed down and it was no big deal. So, yeah, definitely feed has something to do with it. And I agree. Purina is one of the stinkiest feeds out there.
It is. Well, there's so much waste in there, I think, and it's really quite expensive. If you break it down per pound, it's probably the most expensive on the market.
Yep. Jennifer, I hope you've been monitoring your questions for your favorite one.
No, I forgot all about it.
I was going to remind you, and then I forgot about it. So, oh well. Bill says I use Kalmbach 28% starter and 16% layer. Big difference in the poop smell.
Yep, big difference.
All right, that brings us down. Yeah, even the Vicky says the same thing. Purina makes them stink so bad.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that brings us down to the bottom of the questions. You can't see any of the questions on your end?
Oh, I can see them if I come up here. I'm blind.
Oh, so. Okay. Well, so am I. Well, pick somebody for your eggs then.
The one that asked me what my favorite was, whoever that was.
Oh, Lord. You're going to make me look for it.
Well, I can only see the one.
Was that an early on question or a later question?
Oh, what my favorite one was maybe 5 minutes ago. I don't know. That's when we got off on the sparkly fee.
Gotcha.
Whoever it was, say me right now.
Yeah, whoever it was, comment because I can't find it. I got another question here. Ed says, love you guys' presentation, best information about feed and breeding. Would love to win your egg. Oh, yeah. Jennifer, let the people know what you're doing about shipping from here on out.
For shipping, okay, well, I've shut down live shipping. I know I have outstanding orders, so I have to fill all of those so they don't overlap into Christmas shipping. And I have shut down Celadon orders because I'm sold out until Thanksgiving anyway. And but on Black Friday, I always run a sale. So come back on Black Friday, and I have a wait list set up on the Sparkly Fee if you want to be first to be notified when those come up available, which will be Black Friday. But if you're on the wait list, you get first dibs. And then I'll start shipping again after New Year, weather permitting.
Okay. HP just chimed in and said that is a 50 count of cartons. So somebody's going to get a 50 count of cartons. Whoever can use the cartons, comment cartons, and whoever can use the $50 hatching time gift certificate, comment hatching time or $50, whatever. I like to make sure that the people that I give them to are actually going to use it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? 340 Quail Farm, you're still in the house. We're going to send you a 30 count of hatching eggs from HP. And all I need to do now is a $50 gift certificate and the all out of spoons. You're the first one. You're going to get the gift certificate. Okay, and all clean exteriors. You're getting the cartons. What happened to them? And of course, my pen died on me.
And for those that ship, don't forget that I have eggfoam.com for shippers.
Oh, that's right. Yep. I guess I can read that. For everyone that we just called, I need you guys to send me your shipping information to Terry at CoturnixCorner.com. Make sure I get a good shipping address, a good email. A lot of people forget the email because they think that it's the email that they're sending it with, and also a good phone number. So if you guys want to send me your information, I will forward it on to the Jennifer, HP, and Hatching Time. All right. Oh, Don Skin just checked in. Glad you could join us, Don. Nunya says, you're the reason why I even got into Quail in the first place. I'm in New York City, so thanks you for the inspiration. Cool. That should make you feel good, Jennifer.
Well, I think she's talking to you.
I don't think so.
Well, thank you from both of us.
Okay, did I read that Hannah Bishop got the 40 count from you?
Is she the one that asked me what
Yeah.
my was? Well, there you go.
Hey, Hannah, if I didn't call your name, sorry about that. So, Hannah, you're getting the 40 count, and then everybody else that we called is getting the other stuff. Cookie, you're done. Take a break. All right, guys, I think that brings us down to the bottom of the list. And what time are it? 8:09. Perfect timing. So we're going to go ahead and pull the plug on this one. I've got a few people that I sent requests out to as to come on the show as a guest. So I will let you know probably Sunday what we're going to do there. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show and your presentation. I appreciate it.
Sure.
And don't go nowhere. I want to talk to you at the end of the live stream.
Okay.
Guys, have a great night and a great week. I thank you guys for joining us. Again, thanks to Jennifer and thanks to our sponsors for supplying the hatching eggs and the giveaway stuff. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you on Sunday. Have a good one.
Bye.